Welcome back to Court Farm for this special episode with me, Mr. Sealy P. Despite the fact it says December 3 on the screen, today is Remembrance Sunday. And I don't think I did a Remembrance Day episode last year. I'm trying to think. I don't think I did. This is going to be a much shorter episode. This is, yes, it is part of the Court Farm's Let's Play. We are on the map. I'm going to muck out the cows and I'm going to get the mower, whiz onto the field, and then we're going to go down to the War Memorial. Now, you may not know, there's a War Memorial here on the map. You will see. I'm going to park up and, yeah, we'll head down to the War Memorial in a little while, but I need to muck out the animals and sort out the slurry situation. I'm going to grab the mower and do a bit of mowing. I've got some things, I've got my notes, I've got a list of things I want to talk about, a list of things regarding Remembrance Day. I'm going to end this episode in a slightly different way to how I normally do. And it's a weird one. I say this every year whenever I do one of these episodes. I could probably do, I'll go and get the mower first. Let's get the lights on. It is dark, it is that, like I've said before in the last few episodes, it's the time of year, unfortunately. We'll grab the mower, it's in here. Just so I'm ready to do that. And, yeah, now it's a tricky one, and it's one you have to kind of look at delicately. My intention is not to offend anybody, to upset anybody. My intention is not to inflame people's anger or, you know, whatever it might be. However you feel, whatever your feelings are towards war itself, and I've said this on previous years, nobody likes it, nobody wants it, of course they don't. The world would be a much better place without it, of course it would. We live in a world now where people stand up and say, you know, not in my name, all that kind of, you know, thing, and people are very anti-war, and I get it. Who's not anti-war? I know plenty of people that are serving and have served who are anti-war. No, nobody wants to, you know. It's that strange situation to be in. I watched Black Rifle Coffee Company. They do veterans react videos to various different like films and things, and they had two medics on, and one of the guys on there was pararescue, and said that when they served overseas and they do CSAR, which is combat search and rescue, he said the good days, the best days, the days where nothing happens. Because on the days when nothing happens, it means there hasn't been troops in contact, it means no one's been injured, it means no aircraft has gone down, no helicopters crashed. He said those are the good days. So, you know, you can kind of see, you know, and it's a weird one as well, because we look at it in a modern way of viewing these situations, and say that people choose to be soldiers, they choose to join the military, and for the most part that is true, depending on where in the world you are and where in the world you live, and yeah, for the most part that is absolutely true. But remembrance is about remembering, I always say it's about remembering the fallen, of course it is, but I always think it's a day to, it should be a day to say thank you for service. For people who have served, who are serving, for families who have served or are serving, but it is remembrance of those the fallen. And the thing is, like I say, some people choose to join the military because it's a calling. Some people join the military because it's a family tradition, because all of their family members are serving or have served. Some people join just out of the fact that there's no work, there's nothing where they live, and that's the only real viable option. And some people join and they find it's absolutely what they feel they were always meant to do. It's a very interesting situation. I've lost... Where did I leave the telehandler? So, you know, people will join for various reasons, but you go back through history, and I know my grandparents' generation, and indeed going back to World War II, going back to World War I, a lot of people didn't have a choice, you know. Vietnam War, people were conscripted, you know, and yes, you could be a conscientious objector. I'm not here to offend anybody or upset anybody, but also if everybody objected, if everybody stepped back and said, no, I'm not doing it, this is not my problem, think how different the world would be, what a different place we would be living in. Everywhere would be vastly different if World War II hadn't gone the way it did, if ordinary people hadn't stepped up and said, yeah, we'll do this, you know. And I suppose looking at the world we live in at the moment with the current situation in Gaza, with the Ukraine-Russia situation. Again, I watched a video the other day, quite poignant I felt, about Ukrainian commandos who were over in the UK training with the Royal Marine Commandos up in Scotland, and they were interviewing these Ukrainian commandos in like this barn. They were just sitting and they were just chatting to them. And 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they were asking what their jobs were before the war. One guy was a school caretaker, one guy was a dentist. These are just normal people. They didn't want to be in that situation, it just happened, you know, and they find themselves standing up and saying, I've got to do what's right. I know the cows, I know people ask me, or someone messaged me the other day and said, why do I keep mucking out and driving through the cows? I don't really have a lot of choice. They're in the way. You know, I can't avoid them. There's so many in there, you can't avoid them. It is unfortunately just part and parcel of what we're doing, so. Yeah, so, you know, and like I say, with World War II, it's, you know, World War I was the same, you know. I know in the UK especially, because of the way it was done, and people signed up and they went down to their local recruiting offices, towns and villages, so you had whole villages of men would go down, sign up, and at the time they didn't split people up. I've probably talked about this in previous years when I've done this. They didn't split them up, so if you signed up for a regiment, all those guys would all be put into a particular regiment, might even be in the same battalion, same company. And in certain battles during World War I, entire towns lost a generation of men. And I think after that, it was when that sort of thing happened, that was when they started splitting. You know, you would go down to the recruiting office with all your best mates, and when you went in, they would separate you out into different battalions, different regiments, because they couldn't have that keep happening. You know, it's terrifying. What the? I'm not sure what's happening here. That's still got slurry in it. How? That should have run out by... That shouldn't be like that. I mean, I'm not... Unless someone else has been dumping their slurry here. I am ever so slightly confused. No, hang on, that can't be... What is... Okay, I am so confused right now. I need to switch bank accounts. Hang on, sorry about this. I've lost my flow now. Court Farm. Oh, that's right, manure pellets. What's this showing? 35,000 litres, how is that possible? Okay, I'm going to have to deal with that later on. I don't understand what's happening there. Anyway, yeah, so back to what I was saying. So yeah, so you know, some generations just had it thrust upon them. So that kind of the modern way of thinking of, you know, people are warmongers, people join up because they have a thirst for that sort of thing, and that's not the case. It really isn't the case. I know it's often quoted, and of all Karl von Clausewitz's writings on various different things, it's probably the most well known, that war is the continuation of politics by other means. Now, people always think that means that governments just decide, okay, at this point, right, war is the only option. Politics continues, you know. War's never the first option, often the final option. It's always that kind of thing of nobody really wants it. And it's also that thing, the reasons for, and I'm not going to get into the politics and all the nitty gritty. This is very generalization, general sort of view and look at it. The reasons for wars are huge. You know, I always look at it like this, right? You've got two children, two brothers, two sisters, brothers and sisters, kids in a playground. Two kids will squabble, they'll argue, they'll push and they'll shove. Two adults get into an argument, whoever they may be. There may be pushing and shoving, there may be fists flying around, that kind of thing. When you get a larger group, the bigger the group, the greater the violence. I've always... mob mentality takes over. And the scary thing is, the larger the group becomes, and then when you get into groups the size of governments, the hardware involved becomes a lot bigger and a lot scarier. And it's interesting, that scaling up of how that happens. And sometimes wars are fought within a country, when you have civil wars, over various different disagreements about all sorts of things. Wars can often be fought over different cultural views, religious views. When two countries squabble and argue, it's not a fist fight, it gets far, far worse, or it can get far, far worse. Wars can be fought over things where one country is doing something to another country say, we need to step in and do something about this. It can be where one country is committing atrocities to a group of people within their country. Genocides happen and other governments step in. It's very easy to say we shouldn't have wars, we shouldn't get involved in wars, we shouldn't step in. But how can you in good conscience step back and allow those things to happen? And in you know, don't get me wrong, throughout history it has happened. I'm not saying it hasn't. I'm not debating, I'm just saying, you know, that these are reasons why these things happen. So with a very overly simplistic view of it, it's very easy to say we shouldn't do it, we shouldn't have them. I totally agree. We live in a world where they do happen. And most people that sign up, most people that serve, most people that, in whatever branch of the armed forces they've served, whatever reason that they have joined up for, however they've ended up there, they're not the policy makers. They go where they're sent, they do as they're told, there are certain things they need to do, and in peacetime, lots of military branches do peacetime operations, they do aid work, they do so much stuff. It's not just war fighting, you know, there's so much more to it than that. And there are so many trades. Not everyone is a frontline tier 1 war fighter. You know, you've got so many support branches doing so many different things. There's so many different trades. It's not as simple as you first kind of think of it, looking at a broader overview. And I know, like I say, I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of maybe oversimplifying it, but I'm just trying to kind of explain and talk, and it's things that have been bubbling around in my head, you know, leading up to it. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. Well, this year I have more than I did last year, I think. I don't know why. It's a strange one. Well, let's say we are going to go down to the war memorial, and I'm cutting this grass. This is going to be windrowed, and it's going to be silage baled. I was going to put it in the silage clamp, but I think silage baling it might make more sense. It might be quicker and easier. I don't know. I might not. I might still silage clamp it. I haven't decided yet, but we are going to do that. So talking of, we'll get on to the very final bit later on, but obviously at the end it'll be the final bit. As far as World War II goes, and I think one of the reasons myself and Mrs. CDP have been talking about this a little bit, our grandparents served, and it was something my Mrs. CDP's been looking into her family tree. I have been doing mine and had done mine quite a while back, and I've mentioned a few different people in my family tree on various videos and live streams and stuff like that. And Mrs. CDP's been trying to find out stuff about her family, because it's a little bit complicated. I'm not going into the nuts and bolts of it. But as far as we can tell, her grandfather, Thomas Kelly, was a sapper in the Royal Engineers. Her granddad, who I had the pleasure of meeting before he passed, he did bomb disposal in World War II in London. And talking to the guy was phenomenal and incredible, in that trying to kind of get an idea of what these guys did And I said to him, you know, were you not scared? It must have been terrifying. And I can't remember what the statistic was he told me specifically, but the life expectancy of bomb disposal in World War II was terrifyingly short. I mean, terrifyingly short. And it sums it all up. When I said to him, were you not scared? And he said, yeah, of course I was. He said everybody was. But if I didn't do it, who would? You know, someone had to do it. One of my friends would have to step into the hole and do it. Or, you know, you think, wow, that's incredible. My granddad was in the Royal Navy, served on motor torpedo boats in the Channel, and I think I've probably mentioned him and what he did before. I remember him telling me about, I don't know if you know anything about World War II, and sort of, there was the SOE, Special Operations Executive, and these were the spies, the behind the scenes guerrilla fighter type people that would drop in behind enemy lines and would do all sorts of stuff and train resistance fighters and things like that. And he told me they would do lots of nighttime, they would slip into the French coast on the MTBs, the motor torpedo boats. In the cabin, a guy that they weren't, or a woman, there was men and women who they weren't allowed to see, weren't allowed to talk to, would slip out of the cabin from the captain's cabin, come up onto deck, they'd drop them off on the beach, then they'd back away and slip away under cover of darkness. He told me stories of them chasing down E-boats in the Channel that were a danger to shipping, about the D-Day landings being part of all that. It's unbelievable, just unbelievable. And then my other granddad, my mum's dad, served in Africa, out in the desert. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It really is. I find the whole thing fascinating and incredible. You know, that generation, and World War One. I'll get back to in a little while. But yeah. So yeah, don't know. Just gathering my thoughts. While I'm driving up here, I do want to, as I said about thank you for your service, friends and family. It might have, that's the thing as well. It might be that you live in a family or in an area or a place, or you may not have any interaction with this. You may not have a single family member that has served. You may not know anybody. It might be just a circle of people you live with and around, and you have no frame of reference to it. And that must be the case. There must be people out there. I know for a fact a lot of subscribers, and over the years I've been doing this, the amount of people that have reached out to me, that have messaged me to say they are serving, they have served, they are veterans, people that have been wounded, people that have been, you know, in various different ways, have reached out to me, have chatted to me. I've had lots of conversations with lots of you out there, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Especially when people say that I've helped them in some way. It means so much. I've told this story before, but a guy that was serving in Afghanistan, United States Marine Corps, messaged me and said that the entire way through his tour, that's weird, the only thing that got him through the tour were my videos. The mind boggles. Engine off. Let's go and get the Land Rover. While we're heading up, so next thing I want to talk about then is currently serving. Friends and relations, people that I know. The list of people that I know that are serving or have served, like I say, because I was an instructor with the Air Cadets and then a warrant officer and then back to civilian instructor again when I went back with my kids, quite a lot of the youngsters that I taught and trained there went on to careers in the military. A lot of them only ever knew by their surnames, because it was always at cadets, it was their surnames, cadet, whatever. I've told various different stories about various different cadets that I've met as an older you know, when they've been older and they've come and bumped into me in town or wherever and said, "Oh, you know, Mr. Sill," you know, and you stop and you think, "I recognise the face," you know, but you can't always place it. We're going to go a little bit cross country here, a little bit country and a little bit western. I'm trying to think the best way of doing this. So, to all of those guys, and there's quite an extensive list, thank you for your service. One of my best friends growing up, Chris Lalland, who lived next door to us, was in the Royal Signals. Thank you. David Webster, who was a cadet, great friend of the family. I've mentioned him before. Last time I spoke to him, Captain Webster, and Captain Webster was Royal Logistics Corps and then went into EOD, and was, the last time I spoke to him, he was heading up, or part of, 11 EOD. So thank you, David. Then there's Wing Commander Martin Pert. Martin Pert I have mentioned loads of times, who was in the Red Arrows. I've lost my way here. I think I need to follow. Oh, I was right by that field anyway. I think I need to go around this one. You know, his career flying Hawks and Harriers and various different things. Now Wing Commander Martin Pert, OBE, I think. Thank you for your service. Then you got Mississippi P's cousin, or cousins, should I say? Mississippi P's cousins. Gillian, serving in the Royal Air Force. Her cousin David, who was in the British Army, he's now a police officer. Thank you for your service. Gillian's fiance, Andy, and their friend Steve, all Royal Air Force. Thank you all for your service. They're amazing people. I love them all to bits. I mean, they're amazing. I am so far out of where I need to be. I need to be that side on that track. I'll see you on that track in a minute. I've got to find my way. Yeah, so thank you. And as I was saying, if you are a subscriber, if you're watching, if you have served, if you are serving, I know a few of my guys are, even if it's reserves. I know in the US you've got National Guard, that kind of stuff. I'm going to follow the edge of this field. I'll find my way, we'll get there. If you have family members who are serving or have served, if you've lost anybody while serving, thank you. Thank you for your service, thank you for your sacrifice. I've said this before, it's not something we say or do very much in the UK, it's more of a US thing. And I think it's something we should do more. Rather than vilify troops, rather than, you know, we've had a lot of instances of troops coming home from overseas. I know when we were during sort of the Afghan war, and troops were coming home and they would parade through their regiment's hometown, and people would be throwing things at them and spitting at soldiers, and I mean, that's appalling. You know, you may not agree with war and you may not, but they're just people. They're people trying to do the right thing, you know. I don't know, like I say, I don't want to get into all the politics of it. I know what people argue and how they argue it and that kind of thing, but we should say it more, we should say thank you more. So, this is going to look a little bit different, I would imagine, for some people. A massive shout out to Pete, thank you Pete. I might on the next Court Farm video, like proper video, if I can remember where I did it and how I did it. About purchasing of land. We're going to park up. There's a lovely little memorial garden. I'm just going to park up here. Very fitting. You can come and sit and reflect and remember. God, those bells are almost as if they were on cue. That was amazing. So, to finish off then, I know I said this was going to be a short one, and it is. The two that I have mentioned before, I do every year, and I've mentioned one of these guys a lot when I've done walk and talks and stuff like that. Captain Tom Sawyer. I knew very well as a young lad. Died 14th of January 2009 in Goresh, Helmand. Served with 2 9 Commando Royal Artillery. He was 26 years old when he passed. Thank you for your service. And in looking into my family tree and my family history, my great uncle, might be 3 greats, Charles Stanley Sill. I've said this before. My eldest daughter, when they went over, they did a battlefield tour in Europe, and they went to Tynecott Cemetery, and she found his name up on the wall. It's amazing. World War One. It was a private in the Machine Gun Corps, which was disbanded. The Machine Gun Corps, because you had them machine gun sections and detachments, but he was part of the Machine Gun Corps, Vickers Machine Gun Team, and he died at the Battle of Mount Kemmel, 17th of April 1918. He was 19 years old. Thank you. And so to finish off, I thought this was kind of apt. It's one of those things on Remembrance Parades when I was a kid and when I was a cadet, and then when I went as an instructor and we would do Remembrance Sunday parades. I only ever heard one stanza, is it? One portion of this poem. I'm going to end by reading the poem. It's not going to be my usual ending to a video. So this poem is written by Robert Lawrence Binion in 1914, not long after the start of World War One, and after one of the first big battles where obviously bodies were coming back to the UK. With proud thanksgiving, a mother for her children, England mourns for her dead across the sea. Flesh of her flesh they were, spirit of her spirit, fallen in the cause of the free. Solemn the drums thrill, death august and royal, sing sorrow up into immortal spheres. There is music in the midst of desolation, and a glory that shines upon our tears. They went with songs to the battle, they were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end, against odds uncounted, they fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old, age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. They mingle not with their laughing comrades again, they sit no more at familiar tables of home. They have no lot in our labour of the daytime, they sleep beyond England's foam. But where our desires are and our hopes profound, felt as a wellspring that is hidden from sight, to the innermost heart of our own land they are known, as the stars are known to the night. As the stars that shall be bright when we are dust, moving in marches upon the heavenly plain, as the stars that are starry in the time of our darkness, to the end they remain.